So today we're going to talk about a couple of unexpected things that influence judges. All right. We know from most of the stuff we've talked about throughout the semester that judging isn't unbiased, right? Uh, Being entirely unbiased is an unrealistic expectation. Judges aren't robots. But a lot of the things by which they're biased, we can sort of expect. We can think that people who are important in the political realm are influenced by their political predispositions. I'm going to highlight for you now a couple of topics that influence judging that potentially is going to come as a surprise. This is sort of unbiasedness in maybe a bad way or a way that could probably be corrected uh, um, depending on how you view the topics, may need to be corrected, but we can measure various forms of unbiasedness that are problematic. So we're just going to jump into them. Okay, y'all remember the commercials for Snickers, right? About being kind of hangry, right? What we're looking at here is a figure from Israeli District Court. All right, and on the y-axis we have the proportion of favorable decisions, which means giving somebody probation instead of parole. And so that's the proportion that they give, right? So this dot here, they're giving about 65% of people that come before them probation, probation, or they're sending them home instead of sending them to jail. It starts high and it decreases, and then at this point it shoots back up, then it decreases again, and then it shoots back up and it decreases again. Well, this point at which it shoots up, that's lunch. So they start the day. If you follow my cursor here, they start the day and they're kind of nice, and they get meaner and meaner throughout the day until it's lunchtime. And then they're nice again and they get meaner and meaner until the afternoon break. They have a snack, they come back. So you are likelier to go to prison when you have the last meeting before lunch than you are if you have the first meeting after lunch. So the idea here is that the drop in blood sugar makes people ornery, and there's a great deal of evidence for that. And being ornery leads to dispositions in courtrooms such that they're more punitive when they're hungry, even if they don't realize it. What you're seeing here is the first three people in the white bars and the last three people in the black bars. So again, we're looking at the proportion of favorable decisions on the y-axis, and we're looking at sort of months served. And you see in each of these that the first three people are more likely to get a favorable decision than the last three people that they see before lunchtime. And the reason we're looking at that is, well, maybe they structure in these courts, they structure their cases such that they get harder and such that more serious crimes are being evaluated later in the day before lunch. But what we see here is that's not true. Even for the most severe crimes, right, for 37 months served or something like that, these people are still more likely to get released than sent back to prison when it's early, the first three people, or when it's late before lunch, the last three people. Right. So here we see pretty clear evidence that being hungry affects decisions. All right, they're more biased against people before them in the courtroom when they're hungry, when their blood sugar is low. Here's another example of unbiasedness that is perhaps surprising and problematic. Support for traditional gender roles is related to case outcomes. So these researchers were able to ask actual judges whether they agreed with a bunch of statements. I'm going to give you a couple of them. So one of them is, it's natural for a woman to be fulfilled in taking care of her children, but most men feel better when they have a good career too. Most kids are better off if their dad is the primary provider for the whole family. They asked judges a bunch of different questions like that. And the ones who agreed with those statements that promoted more traditional gender roles, such that women weren't in the workplace and that they were at home, those judges were more likely to award custody to mothers in custody battles, and they're less likely to side with women in gender-based employment discrimination claims. Now, this is also true for judges who are experts in probate law, which kind of refers to family law, and those who are experts in discrimination law. Now, if you're an expert in either of those, it seems that there may be less gender bias among the experts, maybe because they've seen it all or something like that. But these results hold. So judges who support traditional gender roles, despite their expertise, are still biased in systematic ways when it comes to, at least when it comes to awarding custody to mothers and siding with women in employment discrimination. There are a few other things. Some researchers looked at the sentences for over 12,000 black females in North Carolina, and they looked at pictures of the women who were accused of the crimes and had research assistants code them for various features of the photograph. Okay, and they found that the maximum sentence length, what that means is, say a judge sentenced you to 3 to 5 years, their dependent variable was 5 years, that's the maximum sentence length. They found that that maximum sentence length was a function of, well, some obvious stuff, right? If they committed murder, their max time is a lot higher. If they're a habitual felon, if they go to prison a lot, their max sentence is a lot higher. If they're arrested on parole, it's a lot higher. But it's also a function of less expected stuff, like skin tone. There's a 12% decrease in maximum time for light-skinned black women relative to dark-skinned black women. There is also an effect of size, of thinness. Thin women had a 15% decrease relative to larger women, right? So that's just 3 quick examples of things that really affect judging that we would hope wouldn't, right? If we go all the way back to early in the semester, we're thinking about what should judges be doing, and we're hoping they're unbiased. These are 3 examples where they're clearly not unbiased, and they're biased in ways that are perhaps the most insidious, okay? Things that people can't control. People can't control that the judge is hungry. They can't control their sex or gender, and they can't control the color of the skin. I suppose they can control their thinness, but that shouldn't be biasing their maximum sentence lengths. So what I want you to think about is the 3 cases I just told you about relate to sentencing. Okay, so it's the equivalent in the federal courts is at the district court. I then want you to think about why these things might not affect appellate judges, right? So judges at the circuit courts of appeals or at the Supreme Court or their state equivalents, right? Why might these things not influence appellate judges? And they only influence judges who are doing sentences. And I also want you to think about why these things might influence those appellate judges and what those differences might be. I also want you to think about a way to detect and avoid these biases before they occur. And if that's even possible, is it possible to make judges see that they're being biased in these ways and help them overcome these biases so that being in a courtroom is more fair for everybody? And that way we can sort of better uphold the ideals of the justice system. All right.